Good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to see so many of your names in our chat telling us where you are here from. My name is Erica Rand Silverman, and I am coming to you from New York City, from Stamola Literary Studio. And this evening, we will be discussing critique groups, why you need one, how to make it successful, and how it has helped these three acclaimed bookmakers in their own careers. So before we get started, I do want to say that I recognize a lot of the names in the chat from previous events, and that makes it feel like a wonderful community already. And isn't that what we all need? Community, from people who are just beginning to people who have been doing this for many, many years. We rely on each other. And so I'm very happy that we can have an event tonight that will help to improve your chances of finding a community and/or how to improve your chances of creating a successful group out of the community that you already have. So a big thank you to Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators for spreading the word, to Gotham Writers Group for spreading the word, and for Children's Book Insider for spreading the word about tonight's event. I am going to bring in our bookmakers one at a time. They will introduce each other, but I will simply say, welcome Christy Hale, whose most recent book is out the door.
Hi.
Hi. And welcome Katherine Tillotson, whose most recent book is The Three Billy Goats Gruff, the full story.
Thanks.
And hi to Julie Downing, whose most recent book is Cubs in the Tub, the true story of the Bronx Zoo's first woman zookeeper. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Erica. Thank you.
But I will let you introduce each other because you know each other very well because you have all been in a critique group together for a long time.
Okay, great. I'm actually going to introduce Christy Hale. So I knew Christy, or I knew about Christy before I actually knew Christy. In about 1988, I was a brand new illustrator working on my second book, and I often got letters from an art director at Bradbury Press signed by Christy Hale. So then fast forward many years, and I finally met Christy in person at a Reading the World conference. I think Christy brings so many skills to our group. She's a wonderful writer, illustrator, and art director. I think sometimes honest critiques can be hard, but Christy compliments and encourages. And even if you come away from the critique group and feel like, oh my God, I have to revise everything, she still makes you feel good. And she wows me at every meeting with just the sheer number of ideas she brings each month. I mean, I kind of feel lucky if I have one idea, but Christy is just a fountain of creativity. She bubbles with ideas that she turns into these amazing award-winning books, such as Dreaming Up, which was a Hornbook honor for nonfiction, or her most recent one, which Erica shared, Out the Door, which was selected for the Society of Illustrators Original Art Show. There's so much I admire about Christy. I admire her fearlessness to pursue ideas and try new techniques. I think she just has this incredible work ethic and boundless energy, and she just inspires all of us in the group to be better. So welcome, Christy.
Thank you so much, Julie. So I'm going to talk about Katherine. Katherine is the first to offer congratulations when one of our books lands a special mention, a positive review, or an award. Her eagle eyes notice everything. At meetings, she revs us up, brings up the group energy by sharing books by other illustrators that she has discovered. And she stirs us with probing industry questions. Between meetings, She checks in to see how everyone is doing, and she shares her investigations into different illustration techniques. Katherine refers to herself as the quiet one, yet she is really our cheerleader. Katherine has the distinction of being our only member not born in January. She graciously hosts our annual January Jubilee luncheon celebration. So we have bestowed on Katherine an honorary January birthday, and now she gets birthday cake twice a year. Katherine is always learning, and she's exploring techniques for mark making. And then she layers these into her sophisticated Photoshop work. With each project, she pushes herself to new depths. Her 2017 book, All Ears, All Eyes, received 4-star reviews and was called dazzling. When our group began, I did not know Katherine well. I have come to admire her profound thoughtfulness towards others and in her work. Still waters do run deep in Katherine.
Thank you. And so we come back around to Julie. And Julie has been creating children's books since she graduated from RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. And the rest of us followed very different career paths on our way to children's books. But Julie dove into illustrating books for children right after college. She's now illustrated or author illustrated over 50 books. So the depth and breadth of her experience enriches all of us. There are 4 members of our group who teach: Julie, Christy, Ashley, and Lisa. Julie not only teaches at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, but has also taught all over the world with the organization Room to Read, from Grenada to Jordan to Indonesia and lots of places in between. I've always felt that the experience of teaching means one is regularly articulating and speaking aloud about strengths and weaknesses involved in all aspects of storytelling. Julie, along with the others who teach, brings that skill to our critique group. Julie also has an infectious laugh and a sense of humor to match. It adds a lightness and lots of fun, always invaluable in a group, especially in a group where we're involved in critical, albeit gentle, evaluation of each other's artistry. So there you have it. 3 of us.
And can you tell everybody, for anybody, just a brief background on the group, where you all live, how many people are in it? Just a very brief overview so they get a sense of where we're beginning.
Christy,
Well, we all live, well, I was going to say we all lived in the Bay Area, although we have a current group member who is in Vermont, Ashley Wolf. But the rest of us are in the Bay Area, and we have 6 members. Am I right? Did I count
Yes.
right? 5, 6, 6 members. Yeah.
And okay, so we're gonna do a few different things this evening. I'm gonna ask Christy, Julie, and Katherine some questions about critique groups, and then they are gonna talk more specifically about their critique group experience. And then at the end, we're gonna take your questions, everybody. So if there's something that we missed talking about, you will have an opportunity to chime in and let us know what you'd like to hear more about. I think I just wanna start from the very beginning with acknowledging that there are probably pros and cons to having a critique group. I'm sure it is not all perfection. And so I was hoping you could talk a bit about that to start us off.
Well, I will definitely say 2 things. One pro is that it's just really a privilege to have someone else care about your work at all. And so to have these people that are paying attention to your work, it's really an honor. And also having regular meetings acts as a little carrot, and it makes us accountable to each other. So it gives us a date to work towards. So, it prods us in our creativity.
Yeah, I feel like another pro to having a critique group, and I guess I've probably been in a number of critique groups throughout my career, and I think for whatever reason, this is just such a special group. I think I just appreciate another set of eyes on my work, and in particular, such a professional set of eyes. Every single person in our group is, I think, quite an amazing creator. And although we're all really different in the kind of books we do and in our styles and in kind of even how we think about something, I really appreciate everybody's expertise in looking at something that I've probably been staring at by myself for way too long. So I think that's a big pro to being in a critique group. And I
Are
don't know
there
if
any
anybody
cons?
has any negative.
Yeah, are
any
there
cons?
negatives? There's got, I mean, I guess there could be negatives, perhaps.
So when I was asked to join the group, I hesitated, and these guys didn't know the story until we decided to participate in this webinar. And the reason I hesitated was I was afraid that I would lose touch with my inner voice, that which drove my storytelling and which made it unique, because you're always looking for a unique voice to bring to the story. And I was afraid I was so programmed to hear other people that I would shut down my inner voice and not listen to it anymore. So it took me quite a few months before I showed anything to anyone until I felt positive that I could move forward. But I think that what Julie alluded to, the mix of people, is what can bring success or not success to a critique group. If someone is too braggy or if someone is too dominant, it can make it a bad experience for the other people. So I think they're right. We're really fortunate that our mix has been one that's baked up some good muffins.
Is there one person who's responsible for having brought all of you together? How did your group form?
So I'm going to jump in here because
Yeah, please, 'cause
I
I
think
can't
I kind of initiated it after an SCBWI event where I heard a few different people talking about their critique groups on a panel and raving about them. And Ashley Wolf happened to be on the panel, and she was saying she used to be in a critique group, but she wasn't now. Well, of all our group members, Ashley's the one that I have been aware of the longest. When I first started working in publishing back in the mid 80s at EP Dutton, we published Ashley's books, and I was a big admirer of her work. So I always was familiar with her. And so I immediately after the meeting sort of pounced on her and asked if she would want to start a new critique group. And she'd been in a critique group previously with Julie. The two of them have a history from RISD. And so we thought about that. I had recently been at ALA and been sharing work. It was our member Lisa Brown and I were both down in Anaheim, and she was showing me some of her work, and I thought, oh, she's an author illustrator, maybe she'd like to join us. And then Julie knew Katherine and invited Katherine. So that's how we, I think, initially got. Everyone has their own kind of connections of how they knew each other.
Yeah, I knew Katherine both as an art director. I also worked for her. She had a design studio in San Francisco. And then we actually were part of a really wonderful sort of online, I don't think we were a critique group, Katherine, but we talked about books. So it was two writers and two illustrators, And we basically emailed back and forth what we were reading, what we thought about the books. And it was much more writing centric because the two other people were young adult writers. And that's how we knew each other. And Katherine and I actually live not that far from each other, coincidentally. And I always admired just Katherine's, her ability to articulate problems, to articulate, not offer solutions, but to articulate maybe what wasn't working. And I just thought she'd be such a good fit for the group. So that's how she happened.
It sounds
then,
like, I was going to say, it sounds like a lot comes from being aware of whose work you're admiring and who you enjoy interacting with, and a good pounce. A good pounce is always, it's always a great way to start a group.
I am never opposed to stalking people. So, just to sound scary, because we were very lucky and had our group for quite a while. And then Ashley Wolf, one of our first members, moved to Vermont. I don't know how many years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And we knew we liked the size of our group. And when Ashley moved, Zoom was not a thing. And so we weren't sure how to include her, but we liked the idea of 5 people in the group. And I was at a cartoon art museum, and there was this woman there in this fabulous polka dotted, I think, a skirt and everything. And I was like, ooh, who's that? And it was Susan Gall. And I pretty much stalked her that whole evening because I knew her work. And
Because of those polka dots.
And she was wearing polka dots, so that was great too. And anyway, and I just thought she'd be a great fit for the group too. So that's how Susan came a couple of years after we'd formed, but is just a wonderful member too. So see, I'm not opposed to stalking people either.
So for all of those who are watching, do you have recommendations for them about how they could begin to form their own group if they don't already have one?
You should definitely kind of scope out the people that are in your environment. Like if you're, for instance, both Julie and I teach at the Academy of Art, and I always encourage my students at the end of the semester to see if they want to make a connection with anyone else. And during the semester, I try and orchestrate a lot of peer critiques. So, I think if you respect someone else's work and you've kind of seen it, that might be a person that you would find. Maybe you know someone through various author events, local illustrator author events. And of course, SCBWI is a good way, conferences and all. Those are a few ideas.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes our group work so well, and maybe a few of the other groups I've been in, not that they didn't work well, but I find I got so much out of this group is I think we're all at the same level and we have sort of the same goals for what we're trying to do with illustration. And for me, that was important. I found it harder in a group where somebody did advertising art and somebody was, a brand new beginner. So I think you have to think about sort of the combination of what you need from the group. And I think for me, the fact that we're all pretty much on the same level is just such a bonus, and what makes, for me, our group work really well.
I actually am part of a writers group additionally, and most people in the writers group are writing adult or young adult or middle grade and not picture books. I mean, there's a little bit of picture book action, but I think it is very helpful to have people who are focused on the same genre and they're aware of what's going on and what's happening in the industry, and so I think that makes a difference.
Can you talk a bit about what makes a group work?
Ooh, Katherine, I feel like you should speak about this.
One of the things I both these guys have already alluded to the deep respect that we have for each other, but I think when you approach another person's work asking questions, it's a really good place to start. And for the person showing their work, it's good to think about what exactly you're looking for feedback on. So we have had times where we've shown our work where we say, don't say anything. I'm shipping it tomorrow. I'm done with this.
Tell me
And
about what's
we're all
great.
quiet. So coming up front and saying, what is it you're trying to figure out, and how can we identify that and address it? So instead of going at something with a shotgun, you're like, identifying it with a target and a rifle instead. So
Yeah, and
I would,
I think I really appreciate, and Catherine, you do this. It's that idea of asking questions. So you're not telling the person like, you need to do this, because sometimes I think that might be how you solve the problem, but it's not necessarily say how Christy might want to solve the problem. So I appreciate, Catherine, especially your take on it, where you might say, like, how are you going to do this, or have you thought about this, or and I think it's a really nice way for me to think about kind of how I want to solve the problem, not come away and think, oh my gosh, Lisa would do this, but is that what I want to do? So I think that our group has been really good about, kind of helping all of us be our best selves, I guess. I mean, not
I will
always.
say though, one thing that is kind of funny that to me speaks of the level of comfort we have with one another. I do specifically remember bringing printouts of my book, Dreaming Up in Progress, and Ashley correcting some of my anatomy on my printouts. But I was so thankful. I mean, it was so helpful that she did that. And the thing is, there's kind of an ease. We know, we trust each other. And so it sort of allows us to speak the truth to each other. And it is important in critiquing that you don't take over someone's work, but there's also sort of different points, I think, in the critique process. Like if you were critiquing a story, you wouldn't start necessarily trimming the words down for word count until you got the overall structure right first. So, sometimes you're looking big picture and sometimes you're looking refinement. And I think we're sort of comfortable in all those different places with each other.
Yeah, I think that makes. Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Cross-pollination, because I think that's a really sweet thing that happens within a group is you influence each other's thinking, and in a good way, to stretch each other just by being together,
Yeah, I think just seeing how we all differently kind of solve the same problems is what I find really helpful. So I might be looking at what Christy's doing and seeing how she's thinking about, how she approached out the door. And I learn a lot from that I can bring back to my own book. And then I guess the other thing I always think about too is I have learned, I used to come home from the critique group meeting and like madly like rip up my sketches and start all over again. And then I have learned to let it sit for a few days so that I can distill all of the incredible information I got, and yet still go back and decide like, what is me, what is Lisa, what is Christy, what do I want to do? So I found that helpful, as well as a way of also approaching what I get from the critique. But I think, Catherine, you're right. It's definitely cross-pollination in lots of things that we talk about.
Yeah, I think we've all said that we carry each other's voices in our heads all the time, all the time.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm drawing a figure, I hear Susan Dahl like, would you really do that way? Should that arm be a little bit more out? Should there be a little bit more emotion? I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So yeah, I think good voices in our heads.
What a
Definitely.
gift.
It is a gift. I feel like we all improved incredibly. Like I think every single one of us has grown, and maybe growth is normal, but I think it's accelerated or really advanced because of our influence and our impact on one another.
Yeah, I think one thing that makes our group a little unusual too is it feels like there's very little unhealthy competition, I guess. I mean, I don't come away and and think, oh God, Christy has like 3 projects and she just won this award. It just feels like we're all so happy for each other, whatever happens. So I think there's a lot of support and not a lot of competitiveness, which I think is also what makes this work really well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you run your meetings so that they're productive? I mean, do you ever just like start chatting like that's that, talking about the movie or the weather, and then whoops, there goes an hour? Or do you have a real structure to your time together?
Well, I did walk into one meeting and they were all talking about their wedding dresses. That was funny.
Is it like book club where nobody reads the book? Or is it like...
There actually is a structure, but Christy has thought about this and she might be the best one to answer the question. You articulated it really well, Christy.
Oh, well, I think that we usually we come together around 11:30, and when we were meeting in person, we would alternate each other's homes, and we would all do kind of a potluck lunch. So everyone contributed. And so initially it is more of a social time and we're catching up. But we've kind of become very generous with how long we allow the meeting to go. And so initially someone like Katherine and also especially Lisa's good at this too, tend to bring really inspiring books by other illustrators. And so we do a lot of show and tell first, and maybe talking industry news or questions. And we have lunch, and so it is kind of an exchange time before we get down to business of actually doing the critique.
Yeah, I like the way we structure it because it feels loose enough that we can socialize, and we get all that socializing out a little bit at the beginning. And then when lunch is over, we really get down to looking at everybody's work. And unlike some groups, we don't time ourselves or do anything. We don't go in any particular order. It's just whoever has things to share will put them out, and then we talk about them. And that part of the meeting can go shorter or longer according to where everybody is with their work. So I think it works really well because I do think we get down to the nitty gritty. There's not a lot of discussing of other things once we start critiquing.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that you're supporting each other in ways beyond just the critique of your actual projects?
Well, witness, I am here today because Christy and Julie were represented by Stamola Literary Agency and introduced me, and I gave me their experience, which was excellent. And so, yes, I'm the newest member of the group to join Stamola Literary Agency.
I thought you were going to say that they brought you here today. It's through their support that you actually came to Stamola Live, which is probably true too, right, Katherine?
Well, beyond that, I mean, we do talk agents, and we've shared a lot about that when we were before we were agented, or if we were changing, or if anything like that. That's definitely something. We also do things like we might share if we want to send out promotional material. We might give each other tips like, oh, you should send it to this person, or oh, why don't you make this kind of flyer or this kind of project, or contact these people. And so we do a lot of support that way as well, and we share resources with each other.
Yeah, and then I think it just general friendships have come from this group too. I mean, so I think beyond illustration and art and all of that, there's lots of nice things that we do. And I feel like I can call Christy or Catherine and bitterly complain about other parts of my life that don't even have anything to do with art, and they'll listen. So that's been nice too. But,
critique
yeah.
group / therapy.
Yeah, all sort of goes into one.
It all always comes back to therapy.
Yeah, it's a full service critique group, I think. Yeah.
I know that you did prepare some show and tell for us this evening. So I do want to leave some time for that. Would this be a good time?
Sure. I'm going to share the screen. Let's see. I have to remember how to do this. Oh, share. That would be it. Application window.
There we go.
Are you seeing it? Okay, let me go.
I'm going to add it in. Ready for me to put it on the screen?
View slideshow. Is that?
Yeah.
Are you seeing it? Okay. All right.
Do you see it?
It's loading.
On the screen?
Oh, here we are.
Yep, there it is.
Okay. So in case you don't know our other group members, you're seeing Ashley Wolf at the far left. And of course, you've met Catherine. That's Lisa Brown in the center, Julie and myself. Susan wasn't part of us at this point, but we'll show some pictures with Susan later. So Catherine and Julie, feel free to pipe in.
Oh, well, we were trying to decide when we were looking at these whether this was a January Jubilee or not. It could have been us celebrating our birthdays. We're not sure. It's a lot of celebrating of our birthdays that goes on.
So up here, actually, this is nice. The group was helping me celebrate when I got a Hornbook Honor Award, and there's my silver plate. And a true story is that I actually had to do some cloning in that silver plate because we were at Lisa's, and I found when I looked at the silver plate, it was reflecting the toilet in her hall. So this is an altered photo.
Yeah. And then on the other side, I think one of the fun things is now whenever any of us travel, one of the big criteria is to find a little something to bring back from our trips for the critique group. So we are sitting in my backyard with umbrellas that Ashley brought all of us from India. So I think there we are with our Indian umbrellas.
Okay. Yeah. I know that right before Ashley left, and when she moved to Vermont, she bestowed on each of us one of her scarves from her scarf collection. So I think that's the image on the left.
Yeah. And then just don't think that we drink very much at our meetings. I feel like this is the one and only time we actually had wine, and we must have been celebrating someone's good fortune. The one in the middle, I think, is all of us toasting someone's good fortune.
It looks like we've already consumed the wine.
Yeah,
Yes.
So I guess we already celebrated someone's good fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the far left is our newest member, Susan Gall. And I think we are celebrating Catherine's birthday at this meeting.
Yes, that was my second birthday cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, makes you wistful. This is what our lunches used to look like. This is Susan Gall's backyard.
It really does. There's a lot of comments in the chat about how the people can't wait to be shoulder to shoulder and dining together and celebrating together again.
Yeah. Yes. This was. I don't know if our lunches always look this beautiful, but it was very nice to be able to get together in person. That is for sure. So this was the lunch part of our meetings.
So
This makes
here,
me-
all 6 of us are now. Now we've brought, instead of in-person meetings, we are switched over to Zoom.
I just think this is the funniest photo of all 6 of us because I think all of our expressions show a little bit about how we feel about Zoom. I mean, I'm so happy to see everybody's face, but sometimes it's like, oh, here we are in front of the computer again. But we are lucky that we can still get together. Well, this is me putting up some art from my latest book that'll come out in the summer, and getting feedback from the group. So again, it's not, I mean, it works really well on Zoom, and it allows us to include Ashley, who is in Vermont, and we can share screens. And I miss art on the floor, but this is still a great way to get together and get feedback.
Oh, okay, I'm up. The examples that you're going to see are from the Three Billy Goats Gruff, the full story, published by Athenaeum last year, 2020. Okay. And this is what Julie was alluding to. Oftentimes we will take all the spreads from a book and lay them out either on the floor or a large dining room table. And that way we can get the sense of the whole book, which is important. Okay. Okay, here's a problem that I brought to the group. I thought this layout was really boring. The goats did not, it just seemed very predictable to me. And when I presented it to the group, they said, well, how about changing the size of the goats a lot more and giving them more personality? And I don't know. I love that little sketch up in the right-hand corner. That's really a nice one. So next you'll see what happened. So this is the final illustration for that particular spread. And I was much happier with the solution. So the next example, again, it felt too predictable to me. It felt too obvious a solution. This is where the troll is confronting Big Billy Goat on the bridge. And I think it was Susan, who comes from an animation background, who suggested it should be more like a shoot-off or a confrontation between gunslingers, with one person in the foreground very large and the other small, and then turn the page and switch that relationship around. So now you'll see what happened. Oh, these were some more scribbles. I saved all these scribbles. They were so great. Same problem, yes. And so this was the first spread where the troll is confronting Big Billy Goat, and I made him as gigantic as I could. And then on the next spread, you'll see I switched it around. So the Big Billy Goat is now huge and troll is teeny weeny. So that was, again, another solution I was really happy with.
So Julie, did I get this I got this out of order. I'm sorry.
No, I think this is all right.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
this is, no, because I'm going to talk a little bit about my latest book called Cubs in the Tub, which is published by Neil Porter Books at Holiday House. And this was a book that I decided when I first read the manuscript that I wanted to do some sort of graphic picture book, which was not a form I had ever done before. Okay, next. But we are so fortunate. I mean, I think one of the things I love about our group is just the sheer amount of experience that we have. So this is Lisa Brown, who I think is just an incredible cartoonist. She's done this 3-panel book review for Ever and Ever. And she's really great at thinking in sequential art. Okay, next. So this was my first somewhat lame attempt at, with like no thought at all, of laying out Cubs in the Tub. I do a text dummy before I really think too much about the illustrations. And I brought this to the group and showed it to everybody. And I think everybody was really helpful in getting me to think more clearly about a format that worked, because it just felt a little bit all over the place. Okay, next. So this was, then I draw on top of it in my sketches that hardly anybody but me can tell what they are. But I think what was so helpful, again, both Lisa and then everyone else in the group really helped me refine the layout, so that I gave me sort of not only parameters, but also maximum flexibility, so that I could really play with different size images, and yet it didn't feel like every page was completely different. Okay, next. Next. Yeah, so this is one of the finishes for Cubs in the Tub. And again, I think that with the help of the group, they really, really gave me advice and good direction for both the illustrations and then just the general layout for the book. Okay, next. So this is my latest book that just came out, called Baby Moses in a Basket. And I'm just going to show a couple things about how that book also improved greatly thanks to our group. Okay, next. So as Katherine mentioned, Susan, who was trained as a Disney animator, just has such an eagle eye for really zeroing in on gesture and emotion and pushing the gestures in every single interaction. So that's her wonderful drawing on the left of what that baby should be doing, and then kind of my overlay over my sketch to kind of push the gesture a little bit more. Okay, next. And then that's what the finished art looks like. But as I said, you know, our group is so great in both kind of helping at the beginning and all over thinking conceptually, and then also, again, narrowing down to where the hand is in relation to the mother's face. Okay, next. Okay. I love this photo. This is not me after a tough critique, but occasionally I think group members will act out a pose for a specific gesture in order to really feel what that gesture should be. Or they make you pose for it and take a photo of you so that you can incorporate that into your art. Okay, next. So there is my drawing. This is a moment in Moses where Moses's mother actually releases his basket into the Nile. So it is a highly emotional moment. So I had to feel it and take a photo of it, and now embarrass myself in front of loads of people by sharing the photo of what that was. But again, great help from the group. Okay.
Okay, I'm up. So Christy Ottaviano asked me to illustrate a picture book biography about the photographer Ansel Adams. And of course, Adams is well known for his black and white photography of nature. And I just wasn't sure how I should approach the art. I'm not a photographer, and I wasn't sure, should I create black and white art only? Should I do full color or some kind of blend? And my feeling generally about picture book biographies about an artist is that an illustrator should somehow nod to the artist's work, but not imitate it. The illustrators should retain their own style. So I began exploring with a sample that showed Ansel as a child near his home on the Golden Gate headlands. And I always sketch my compositions before I experiment with color. So I'm really embarrassed to show you the next image, because these early experiments in watercolor, I was really wrestling with the monochromatic values versus color. And I also tried rolling ink through stencil shapes on a gray paper background. And basically I'd say, yuck, these are all really ugly. And I gave up on them before they were finished. So clearly I was flailing. So I started wondering, why had Christy selected me at all? And so I thought my first author-illustrator book was The East-West House, Noguchi's Childhood in Japan, and that had been recently published by Lee and Low. And Isamu Noguchi was a sculptor, and so I attempted to make that book feel very tactile, and I used a lot of textured and printed papers in collage. And though Noguchi and Adams are very different from one another, they both shared a deep love of nature. And so I thought maybe that was something that had triggered something in Christy's thinking that made her think I could do this. So our critique group member, Lisa Brown, unlocked the solution for me. She suggested that I again work in collage, but this time consider incorporating photographic elements. I like the touch of materials. So most of my initial work is done analog. And so I printed out lots of waves and clouds in both black and white and sort of desaturated color. And I tried cutting them up and adding them in with other papers. And so here is the sample that I ended up giving to Christy. And my hope is that you can see my collage style, but you also see a young boy who might be starting to see the world through a photographer's eyes. And so throughout my book, Ansel Adams, A Life in Nature, I try to combine both collage and some photographic elements in every single image. Like you can see the camera, the old Brownie cameras, based on a photograph. There's some photographic things happening in the clouds, but a lot of it is collage work. So I do work, digitally after I first work conventionally. So a more recent book, Todos Iguales, Un Corrido de Lemon Grove, All Equal, A Ballad of Lemon Grove, that was done with Lee and Low Books. I knew that I wanted to work inspired by the old vintage citrus labels. And back in the 60s, that was how produce was delivered, in these old crates. And because all the content's perishable, these labels were designed to be really eye-catching, very graphic, bright color. And my story that I was writing about was in Lemon Grove, citrus orchards, and it was in 1931. So this felt like a fitting kind of style. So I worked on kind of a craft board with bright, vivid gouache. And our group member, Susan Gall, is from the San Diego area, where Lemon Grove is in San Diego County. And so she was very familiar with all these different kinds of fruit labels, and she was an inspiration to me. I started collecting, this is a Pinterest board, I have lots more, but I started collecting a lot of this stuff. And so I tried incorporating this kind of look into my art throughout. But, she kind of nudged me, I'd have to say. Early on, my sketches were not taking advantage of the designs of these labels. And so she kind of said, well, why don't you try this here or that there, or maybe you could use a diamond shape like they have. And so, her encouragement made a difference in that. So I just thought I'd sort of end with this image. And, I guess this to me sort of represents all the voices that we have in our heads from each other. And any one of these words, I can think of a member of our group or a few members of our group that might have encouraged me. And I think about that person when I think about anatomy or perspective or visual narrative or scale or any of these things. So we carry each other with us. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
What is value?
Value is the lightness or darkness of a color. So for instance, Ansel Adams is known for his 10 scale value of, white to black. That's one of the things he introduced in photography. But value
one
is
of the hardest one of the hardest things sometimes to think about when you do your illustrations. Yeah.
So there was one question that came in while you were all talking, and while we talk about this question, I'll give anybody else a chance to add into the chat now. If you put a question in earlier, it might be hard for me to find it. So even this one, I'm doing from memory. But somebody was wondering, how far in advance do you share your work with each other? And like, sort of how close to when it's due, or how early in your own process?
Gosh, I think it sort of varies. I mean, these days, I think this group sees everything from like my earliest scribbly thumbnails to finished art. Whereas Catherine mentioned, sometimes you just want to be like, okay, this is what you guys say. You say, wow, that looks great. And then I'm going to, send it off. You're not allowed to say anything, but at least for me, I mean, sometimes it's embarrassing. I feel like the poor group, it's like, I can't show this to them one more time. They've seen it in so many versions. So I don't know. For me, I feel pretty comfortable sharing everything from the very beginning.
It's probably part of the process of getting to know each other and establishing your rapport that drives a little bit of that. And each person's different. They'll look for they'll want to throw something up against the wall and see what sticks, or I think each project's a little different. We're all a little different. So, but Julie's right. We keep moving it earlier and earlier in the process.
Yeah.
How often do you meet with each other?
Your turn, Christy.
Okay, well, we usually try to meet once a month. We were sort of not meeting sometimes in the summer. At least one of our group members tended to be away in the summer, but now whoever's around, we try to. And with Zoom this last year, it's a little easier to make sure that we can meet no matter where we are.
Yeah, a month seems, for at least me, I know groups sometimes that meet every other week. A month to me is the right time because it gives me enough time to accomplish something, and it's not too often where I feel like half the time I'd come with nothing. So I like that, once a month is enough time to kind of get you to do something or give you a good deadline to end up with something.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this question up because I hear this a lot. Do you ever say to a fellow member, this story just isn't working? Sometimes I think my critique group is too polite to me and I want brutal honesty.
Do I?
Catherine, you had a good example about this. I don't know.
I think we do. Wait, I have a good example of this? Did you say that to me? I don't know. I do feel like we will say that sometimes. Or I don't know if we just say no, throw it away, it's not working at all. But I think sometimes I will put something down and the reaction of the group is such that I do come home and think, maybe I'll rethink that idea. Yeah.
I think we're pretty sensitive to each other, like we all kind of understand that you need to be positive, you need to ask questions, you need to protect each other's feelings, but you also, want to offer direction. So, it's sometimes our silence communicates.
Yeah, I think a stunned silence after putting your book down can be an indication of like, maybe I should rethink that idea. Yeah. I think I understand what this person is saying. I think there is a fine line between too polite and being brutally honest, because you don't want to derail people, I think. And because I think, they may fix the idea. So I think that is a fine line to find.
Do you ever just bring an idea or concept to the group for feedback with no sketches or words?
Yes. definitely.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, sometimes we just toss out ideas and talk about, and again, as Catherine, who's like our best questioner, will ask questions and get you to kind of refine what you're thinking about. Like, where is the idea headed, or what are you thinking about? So yeah, I think we do that a fair amount.
How do you decide which manuscript to talk about?
I think usually each of us is probably focused mostly on one thing at a time. We might have more than one thing going, and occasionally depending on how much, we might bring more than one thing. But I think we try to protect the time so that we give everybody gets time to share. So we usually make sure to have one thing to talk about, and if there's enough time, we might have more than one.
Yeah, I feel like whatever we're working on, I mean, most of us have a deadline or are working on a project with a deadline. And so I feel like that's kind of where we focus our energy.
But sometimes we're developing ideas to pitch.
Yeah.
And so there's not really a deadline, but I think that's another time when just even having the group is really helpful, because it motivates you to get some samples ready before you meet with the group, so you can get that feedback on your idea.
Yeah.
This is slightly off topic, but I do not blame Polly for wanting to ask you experts. Do you have favorite resources for studying value and color?
It's interesting. One of our members, Lisa Brown, was teaching a composition class last semester. So she actually questioned us a lot about this, like especially like color, and I think that we like different things. Like I absolutely love Joseph Alber's interaction of color. I think Julie, you and Ashley were not so big on it, but I mean,
we had a terrible teacher at RISD that taught us Joseph Alber's theory. So I think we're both like, yeah.
This question, wait, hold on. Where did it go? There was a question that looked good, but now I can't find it. And I know we have 2 minutes before we hit an hour, and I'm so grateful for all the time that you have already given us. Now I can't remember what it was, and I really wanted to ask you for everybody. Well, maybe it'll come back to me while you answer this one last one. When you're in a group with other newbies, it can, oh yes, Elaine, this was my question. When you're in a group with other newbies, it can feel like the unknowing leading the unknowing. How did you know when a group has run its course and when it just needs more time to mature? And I was also thinking, what about people who are just starting? Do you feel like they can still be of use to each other even without having the experience that you all have?
Yes.
Yes. I think so.
There's a lot of artful creating going on out there. I guess I would tie it into some of the other books that are in the marketplace. You know, try to make some connections that with published work, so that you can take that away, as well as each other's input.
Yeah, I feel like that. I mean, you know, Christy and I both teach, and I teach undergraduates, and I mean, I still feel like they're capable of critiquing each other, if nothing else, again, of asking questions and spotting something that doesn't make sense, and maybe not necessarily solving the problem, but at least pointing out the problem. I think that helps. And then I do think, as Catherine said, I just think analyzing books that are out there and sort of discussing why they work and don't work is a great way of doing it that way, of learning.
I really think the critique process, when you look at someone else's work you're distancing yourself in a certain way. And I think it helps you to see your own work better and analyze what's working or not working in your own work. And actually, in terms of level of ability, I find in the classes that I teach through the Academy of Art, I'm always amazed at the peer critiques, like the kind of comments that students come up with. And I feel embarrassed, like I'm the teacher and I never even thought of that. Like, so I think we all have different insights that we can bring to the critique process.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is you don't notice everything every time, and so multiple pairs of eyes are are good. And in terms of when do you know when the group runs its course, which is a really interesting question. I guess it's when you no longer feel you're getting what you need out of the group. Maybe that's when it's time to think about a different group, and maybe again, if people are at very different points in what they want out of the group, might be a time to rethink the critique group.
Yeah.
Do you critique art before text or text before art? Do you think one has to come before the other?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I'm thinking.
I don't think there's a rule there at all. And, you know, I think there's an interplay between text and art. And sometimes art is telling the story, so you can pull back on text. Sometimes you need text to do what visuals don't do. So I don't think there's a fast rule. And I know, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Christy.
Well, we're all visual thinkers, but we also read a lot. So we're verbal as well. But like for me, some of my ideas start out as visual ideas and the words come later. So, you know, I just don't think there's one path.
Yeah, I feel like it's very individual. I mean, I think sometimes a book is words first, picture second. I mean, I tend to be much more pictures first, and then I suddenly realize, like, gee, I guess I better add some words in here. So I think it depends on the person. I just think it depends on the person. I find the writing quite difficult, and the pictures come easier to me. So I tend to approach my books that way. But I think it just depends on the book and the project and the person.
Well, I am going to stop us here because we are a few minutes over. And I do want to say an enormous thank you to Christy and Julie and Katherine for being here. You guys ladies, cannot see the chat, but there are thank yous, and you're also lovely, and your group sounds amazing, and I'm happy you have each other. And this was a great conversation. Hashtag squad goals has been a popular one. And so I am not the only one who is grateful to you for spending your evening with me, but you have a lot of other people here this evening who are also thankful to you. So I know how busy you are, and especially now during the pandemic, when every bookstore and publisher wants you to do a video or something on screen. It's very popular. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
We really enjoyed it. I'm sorry we can't see everybody out there, but
I know I have to figure out a way to do it via Zoom because it would be really nice to see everybody's face. But I can see their chats, and you can go back on later and you'll be able to see all the chat too. So I'm going to let Christy, Julie, and Katherine go. So thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
I will take them out, and I will say a huge thank you to all of you for being here, because it is your interest in these events, and it is your joining us at the events that keeps us doing them. So please, if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, that's a great way to keep posted on the events that we're having, or you can subscribe to the newsletter. That's another way to stay posted on the events that we're having, and that you can find on the stimolalive.com website. So I will put that in the chat for you, stimolalive.com. live.com. And on that website, you can see all of our past events. And those are for adults like tonight's event and for children. So if you work with children or have children in your lives, there is an amazing wealth of information on there that can be shared. All right. Thank you to all of you too. And we'll see you next time. Bye.